Hi, I'm Julia Duzon. I am the Chief Operating Officer of River. I've been with River for about 3 years now. I came from traditional financial services. Please do not hold it against me. That bank has since failed, so I feel vindicated. And did my MBA at Stanford, and a very, very long time ago, Alex and I were actually management consultants together. Alex, do you want to give a quick intro?
Sure, yeah. I'm Alex Leishman. I'm the founder and CEO of River. Started the company about almost 6 years ago now, which is hard to believe. And I've been working in this industry for the vast majority of my career. I'm an engineer at heart. I studied aerospace engineering when I was an undergrad and eventually moved into computer science when I started working on Bitcoin. And yeah, it's been a wild ride so far, and excited to talk a little bit more about it and answer questions from people here as well.
Okay, before we jump in, I do want to know who's in the room. So, because I'm hearing from the Columbus team that there's a lot of new faces in here. So I'm curious, who drove from like over an hour away?
Wow.
Yeah, 2 hours-ish? 3 hours? Out of state, maybe?
3 hours, wow.
All right, Scott, where are you from? Louisville, okay.
Wow.
Anyone else?
That's a record.
Out of state? Indianapolis, nice.
West Virginia?
Yeah, we're in West Virginia.
We're in West Virginia? I know Weirton.
Near
Yeah.
Okay. Alex has ties to West Virginia, which we can dig into. Okay, how long have folks owned Bitcoin? Did you buy Bitcoin before 2020? Yeah, okay. 2019? 2018? We're still in a bull. 2017? 2016? 2017, okay. 2012? Maybe you?
2013.
2013, yeah, sorry. All right, last one. Who's a River client? All right,
Oh, nice.
I'll take it. Who's going to be a River client? We just clearly have not sold you sufficiently. Okay, maybe we will in the next 20 minutes. All right, and with that, we want to make this really interactive. I did ask ChatGPT for a list of prompts that I could ask Alex, but instead I would rather lean on this whole group. So I have a few prepared, but please feel free to chime in and make it a dialogue. But Alex, in terms of where to start, maybe start with your rabbit hole journey. How did you discover Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin in 2013?
So when I was in college, I was an engineering student, but I was also very interested in economics. I think the first economics book I read was Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, and that sent me down a rabbit hole. And eventually, I started reading more and more. I started getting into the Austrian economists, Friedrich Hayek, Ludwig von Mises, and I read an essay by Friedrich Hayek when I was a senior in college called The Denationalization of Money, and where he questions the concept of central banking and proposes alternatives. And that really just set up a bunch of thoughts and ideas in my head, and eventually came to the conclusion that I wanted to start my own currency backed by commodities that the government couldn't control. And started doing a lot of research on this, came across these guys that tried to do it with something called the Liberty Dollar. Didn't end too well for them. They ended up in federal prison. So I thought, I don't know, maybe starting my own currency might be a little tough. And then a year after I graduated, I was doing an online programming class and came across Bitcoin. And I was like, what's Bitcoin? And I read the white paper and started doing the research I needed to understand this thing. And once I wrapped my head around it, I was like, oh my gosh, this fulfills the prophecy. And quickly sort of came to the conclusion that someday I wanted to build the Bitcoin bank. But I saw also Coinbase at the time was doing that. Coinbase was building basically a Bitcoin bank, and I thought they were doing a pretty good job. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't do it right now. I'll move to Silicon Valley and try and work in the industry and sort of see what happens. And so sort of like talk about that, but that was sort of like the early days of my Bitcoin journey.
And so I know you graduated from Maryland, aerospace engineer, worked 1 year as a consultant.
Yeah, like exactly 1 year. I promised my mom I'd I'd work for a full year, my first job out of college, but the first day I started the job, I realized I didn't want to do it. But I lasted 365 days and made my mom proud.
She's still proud of you to this day.
Yeah.
I know that as a fact. Moved to the Silicon Valley, and then what did you do?
I got a job. Well, I did a programming boot camp when I first got there because I wasn't a computer science student, so I had some sort of skills to build up, and got a job at a Bitcoin startup. When I moved to San Francisco at the end of 2013, I thought everyone was going to be working on Bitcoin in San Francisco because on Reddit, on our Bitcoin, that was like, I don't know, it was super active. Everyone I talked to in there was like really into Bitcoin, so I just assumed that everyone in Silicon Valley would be super into this thing because it's obviously the future. And then I get to San Francisco and like no one cares about Bitcoin except for like the people at the Bitcoin meetup. So I was like, that's kind of weird. But then I realized that that's also a huge opportunity because it means all the like top engineers aren't trying to work at these companies, so it was much easier for me to get a job. And so yeah, I worked at a company called MyCoin, which was like the Coinbase for Taiwan, but they had an office in the Bay Area. Helped build that, and it was cool building something for a market I didn't know much about, like the Taiwan market. Actually, one cool thing, just funny story. One of the most popular ways to buy Bitcoin in Taiwan was they actually like have card readers at their house that they plug into their computer, and they would like put their bank card into a slot in their computer to buy Bitcoin, which is kind of crazy. And then I ended up going back to grad school. I did my master's degree at Stanford, which I was already like living there, so figured why not? I helped teach the first Bitcoin class as a teaching assistant under a cryptography professor there named Dan Benet, and that was really cool. And then most recently, before starting River, I worked at a fund called Polychain Capital. They're like they were one of the first like crypto funds, and I was trying to find good Bitcoin companies to invest in. I was like the Bitcoin guy at the crypto fund, and was also doing some engineering for them. And after about 8 months of that, I was like, I don't really like investing, to be honest. I want to build stuff, and so I told the founder of the fund, Olaf, I was like, hey, Olaf, like I love working here, but I really want to start this company to build like the Bitcoin bank. Would you guys invest? And so that's how I sort of raised the money to start River, and then just took it from there.
And what was the thesis, or what were you trying to build when you started River almost 6 years ago?
So the general thesis was that, so what I thought Coinbase was going to do isn't what they ended up doing. Coinbase eventually started adding lots of different cryptocurrencies, focusing a lot on very speculative trading. I saw the behind the scenes of like the VC funds and like Coinbase and like dumping all of these like really questionable assets on retail investors, and I just was like, they're kind of going this direction that I think is going to make a lot of money, but isn't the direction that is building like the most long-term like successful institution. And I was like, well, what if somebody just focused only on Bitcoin and building a financial institution just around this new asset and its ascendancy as a reserve asset of the world. And that was a high-level sort of grug brain, like just do Bitcoin and do it really well, right? Kind of like the equivalent being like, what if I just make really good pasta and only sell pasta, right? It was kind of like that was the general idea. And then the journey since then has been like refining what that really means, like specifically what products do you do and in what sequence. And so that's been the hard part.
And so what is your vision for River?
So, our mission at River is to build the most trusted financial institution in the world. And to do that, we want to build the most trusted financial institution in Bitcoin. And we think if you build the most trusted financial institution in Bitcoin, you'll eventually be the most trusted financial institution in the world because Bitcoin will become the most trusted, transparent asset in the world. So that's generally the high-level idea. Yeah, that's it. That's the high-level idea.
And what would you say makes River different?
Different than
our competitors in the space, other folks who offer Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we're obviously different than a lot of the crypto companies because of our focus purely on Bitcoin. And since we started, a number of other sort of Bitcoin-only companies have also cropped up, which I think is great. It's a sign that there's a demand for people who really want the level of simplicity and trust that brings. At River, I like to think that really we stand apart in transparency. Is a big one. Transparency, trust, and security. We're the only Bitcoin company that does proof of reserves in the United States. And we also invest and obsess a lot about our service and our clients. I think a lot of people who build apps kind of see it as just like, we build the app, people show up, they use our app. We don't call people who use River users, we call them clients. The relationships matter. We sort of try and deeply internalize that every person who interacts with River is a real person. They have family, they have friends. Bitcoin is a big part of their life. It matters a lot, and we take that responsibility very seriously. So we're always trying to invest in that relationship, and how can we keep bringing more value to the people who trust us. And so I think that's a cultural thing, and it's hard to do at a company. And so and then on top of that, I think we have a lot of cool features. And so we also want to be like the coolest app, right? We want to have the coolest things. River Link, Bitcoin interest on cash, proof of reserves, zero fee recurring orders. We have some other cool stuff coming in the next few months.
We don't even call clients customers. We nip that. So tech companies say users. Walmart has customers. Your coffee shop has customers. We have clients. This is high end. We have personal relationships with folks. Bitcoin is a volatile industry. We talk about a lot how to build a company. There's a lot of companies that are going to pop up in a bull market. What have you learned having gone through a number of cycles of running a company in this type of volatile industry?
Yeah, I kind of like to describe running a Bitcoin company or a company in this industry. It's like running a hotel in a beach town, but you don't know when summer is, and you don't know when winter is. The season will just change sometime, and it'll surprise you. And so, watching, having been in the industry a long time and seeing the mistakes people made, I saw the biggest mistake that people make is trying to fight the reality of the volatility and the variance of the revenue, the variance of the business. And so at River, what we do is we just embrace it. Like we say, this will be volatile. There will be bull markets, there will be bear markets, and just institutionalize that reality. And the way we do that is we have a few sort of things that we try and aim for, which is one, never extrapolate a bull market, right? We never. One thing a lot of companies in this industry have done is there's a bull market, and then their finance team draws a line like this and assumes revenue will keep doing this. So then they hire armies of people, and then a bear market comes along, and then they're like, uh-oh, what did we just do? So what we do is we invest a lot in automation, and we try and hire just a small number of very high quality people, and we target talent density so that we always have the revenues to cover our expenses in the bear markets, and we don't need to hire that much when things are going crazy because we've invested a lot in our systems and we have really high capability people.
River holds a fair amount of Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and we're seeing a lot more companies come in who are asking to hold Bitcoin as a treasury asset. What was your philosophy around holding Bitcoin on River's balance sheet?
So for River, the only logical thing to do is to hold a lot of Bitcoin because, to put it bluntly, if Bitcoin doesn't work, River doesn't work. River only works as a business if Bitcoin ends up working out, and so we might as well compound the value of the outcome to the company. And so if Bitcoin's a zero, well, River's a zero, and so if we have Bitcoin on our balance sheet, well, everything's zero. But if Bitcoin really is a win, then might as well sort of double or triple sort of the outcome for the company. So that's like kind of the math of it. But then more broadly, because we deeply believe in Bitcoin becoming the reserve asset of the world and continuing to increase in purchasing power, it's a major hack for increasing the amount of resources that we have to build the company, and it's worked out very well so far.
Okay, I'll open it up in a couple minutes for questions here, so think about what you want to ask. But Alex, we have a a history of security. You're a security engineer. How has that become a part of River's culture? And how do we treat security differently here?
Yeah, so maybe I didn't mention it. My background is I worked a lot in computer security throughout my career as a software engineer, and one of the things I really noticed that companies get wrong about security is they make a security team, and they're like, we have a security team, they'll keep us secure. But then when you read about how companies actually mess up security, it's rarely the security team messed anything up. It's always some employee got social engineered, or someone downloaded an attachment and ran something on their computer. And so really when you look at it, actually, like, security is about a culture. And so at River, we have a culture where everyone's job is security. Every engineer is a security engineer. Everyone on the client services team is thinking about security. Everyone on the financial operations team is thinking about security. And so that's how we operate. Everyone's job is security, and we're a security company in a way.
And for someone who's just holding Bitcoin, what do you think their biggest security risks are?
So that's a big sort of question in Bitcoin, is what's the safest way to hold Bitcoin? And the short answer is it's different for everybody. But I think there's a few sort of main ways that people lose funds. So there's really two buckets, right? If you're keeping your Bitcoin on an exchange, which frankly a lot of people prefer because it's easier and it delegates the problem to a company who's focused purely on that, like River. There's, your biggest risk is not taking your own personal security seriously, right? Getting tricked by scammers calling you, pretending to be the exchange or pretending to be River, reusing your password from somewhere else, or sort of not adding a beneficiary to your account if something were to unfortunately happen, right? Making sure your assets transfer smoothly to your loved ones. We try and build a lot to make sure that even if our clients mess up their password, mess up their personal security, or get socially engineered, that we have layers of protection there. But you can't stop somebody from sending their money. If they really want to send their Bitcoin somewhere and that person is a scammer, you can't stop them if they really want to at the end of the day. So, and then if you're self-custodying, the biggest risk is actually just messing it up. And so it's something that I always encourage people to just play around with a little bit of money first. If you want to self-custody, start with $50 and mess up, right? Experiment, get your hands dirty, and then decide if this is something you really want to do.
We've done a lot of work to define our target client base, and the one consistent theme that comes up is it's folks who take ownership of their lives. Do you want to maybe elaborate on that, and why does that seem to be such a core ethos of just Bitcoiners in general?
Yeah, that is really what every River client and every Bitcoiner I think has in common. Is it's something that I think is self-selecting for people who take control of their lives, because to come to Bitcoin and to see this as something you want to save in or hold, you have to question a lot of things about the world. Only people who really sort of ask hard questions and are very truth-seeking will come to Bitcoin. And those type of people are people who aren't going to let other people tell them how to live, and aren't going to sort of bet their future on somebody else just taking care of things for them.
He's talking about all of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what questions do you all have?
Do you guys have plans for a bill pay option, so you can live through the app, just pay all my utilities, pay all my bills? Just like you said, you want to be the biggest Bitcoin company. I want to live on the River app and pay my utility bill.
Good questions. For those in the back who didn't hear, he asked, are we going to have the ability for you to just pay your bills through River, for River to just be a replacement for your bank, basically? And the short answer is yes, eventually. There's a lot of things we want to sort of do right to get there. There's from a security perspective, the way a bank works is you have an account and routing number, and then people can pull, like businesses around the world now can pull cash out of your account. We want to make sure that, before we sort of open that to the world, we're really ready for that. And so the answer is eventually. Yeah, good question.
Some compliments for actually having proof of reserve. That's awesome. Is there a process or a way, or do you have any foresight on whether companies like BlackRock or MicroStrategy are going to show that proof of reserve to the world? Like a lot of people have speculation about paper Bitcoin being traded. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. So the question was, River has proof of reserves. Will companies like BlackRock or MicroStrategy do something like that? The answer is maybe. I think it's cultural. I think they feel like they don't have to because they're public. I think they feel like the sort of public company certification is enough proof for everybody. And maybe, but really, I don't know why they don't do it. I think it maybe just makes them uncomfortable to have that much transparency. It is kind of like, it's a big cultural difference, right? Most companies most businesses aren't used to having their, real-time assets just visible out in the open. So I think someone will eventually, but I think it's actually almost as big a cultural shift to get there as it is to buy Bitcoin, which is somewhat surprising, but yeah, I don't know.
Let's hear about the Bitcoin interest on cash. Let's hear about this.
So yeah, Bitcoin interest on cash is a product that we launched a few months ago. And the way it works is on River, you can have Bitcoin and cash. And we said, well, basically people had cash on River there just to buy Bitcoin when they wanted to. And we were earning interest on it through our banking partner. We would get interest from the cash people had at River. And we were like, well, can't we just give this cash back to the customer because we're earning the interest on their cash? And the short answer legally was like, no, actually, you can't pay interest on cash or you're a bank. Like that's like a security. It was you have to keep the cash. It was a very weird situation. So we were like, well, let's rethink this. What if we could pay interest out on the cash? How could we do that? And to do that, we had to do a very deep bank partnership, right? And where we partnered with our banking partner, Lead Bank, and technically they're paying out the interest. So it was a big sort of piece of work to get this all legally working properly. And then on top of that, to be allowed to auto convert that interest into Bitcoin was a whole nother sort of big conversation with regulators included. No one's ever done this before in the United States, and so eventually we got there, and now we have this product where your cash just earns you Bitcoin, and we pay 3.8%. On that Bitcoin, and it's a pretty cool product. I think people have liked it so far. Julia, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I know, I feel like you're a plant asking about our new product. Bitcoin interest on cash is like the coolest, boring Bitcoin product you could launch because it's actually quite simple, right? You earn interest on dollars. Those dollars are FDIC insured, but it gets converted to Bitcoin. And so 3.8% interest as Bitcoin price appreciates, then your effective interest rate can go up massively, especially if you hold for a period of time. So I'm really excited for just a year from now, once people have had 12 months of earning this interest and a price run up, they're going to start to see, it becomes visceral, oh, wow, this went so much further than if I just earned 3.8% interest in dollars.
So is this more like a savings account, or is it more like a money market where you've got checks? What's your access to the deposit?
It is a high yield cash account. So think of the other high yield accounts out there, like Robinhood, Goldman Marcus, right? Every bank, Fidelity, they all have this where you get paid interest on the dollars that you hold. Now you can do that at River.
And you can send the cash back to your bank whenever you want.
The other very cool thing is it means
the cash earns Bitcoin, but the cash is just held there as cash.
So it's not like a CD where you have to make it there for 3 months. You have access to it.
For example, you deposit $100,000. It's there sitting there, earning Bitcoin every day. It's accruing Bitcoin, but it's not eating into the $100,000. A week later, there's still
You
$100,000.
take $10,000 out.
Yes.
And just without penalty.
Yes.
And you're just earning less interest.
Exactly. Then there's $90,000 in there earning interest.
Add anytime.
Yep, exactly.
What's the minimum?
$100 to deposit minimum.
If you have cash anywhere, like I would put it on River. Like we're actually just competing with fiat. Like all the fintechs out there, we're now the most compelling place for you to hold your dollars.
That's right. Yeah. 100%.
Logan was here when we filmed the launch video, which was a new thing for us. And Logan was learning about the product as Alex is reading the script for the video. And he was like, this is so cool.
So, I mean, you might not know this, but even like the savings account at Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they're all paying 0.01%, like basically nothing. So if you have cash there, it's, basically losing money.
Lead also has FDI insurance on that cash, right?
Yes, it's FDIC insured up to $250,000 per person, and we have a project to try and get that up to $3 million per person. So not yet, but we're working on it.
Hey, Alex, real quick. So to your point, how are other institutions like M1 Finance or Robinhood or whoever, traditionally FDIC insurance has been $250,000. How are they getting it to 3 million, 5 million? How are they getting to these much bigger numbers?
Good question. So behind the scenes, the way that works is through something called a cash sweep product. And the way a cash sweep product works is it takes the client cash and then splits it up at a bunch of different banks. So you have $250,000 per bank your cash is at. And the cash sweep, what they do is they like sort of are good at really quickly moving the money around. So it's always there when you need it, but you have a much higher FDIC limit.
What I understand is FDIC, because the FDIC insures the banking system. If 3 banks go under in this United States, the FDIC is flat broke. So another 10 banks go under, there's no money to pay you. Well, it's all a big lie.
Well, that's partially true, right? Like the FDIC insurance fund is not big enough to cover a number of large banks failing. However, in practice,
They'll print the money.
They'll just print the money.
They'll print the money.
You're right. It is all a fugazi, but the whole dollar system is so.
What is your outlook on the new political climate for Bitcoin and crypto, and how might that affect River?
It's a good question. Pretty positive. I think it's a little unclear. I mean, it's still, the new administration hasn't come in yet. We don't really know. But I mean, so more tangibly, I think there's a few changes I hope that we see. One, I hope the banking system becomes more friendly to Bitcoin companies. If we can get more banking facilities for River, we can add cooler products. Historically, there aren't that many banks that will work with us, and that restricts our ability to build certain things. So that's one thing I would love to see. And hope.
So you have Bitcoin Federal Reserve.
Yeah. And so then there's sort of like the narrative, right, of like Bitcoin as now an asset that even the U.S. government buys. If this actually happens, a Bitcoin strategic reserve that Senator Lummis has proposed and Trump has sort of partially endorsed. If that actually happens, I mean, that's a really major sort of shift in sort of the game theory of Bitcoin and nation state adoption. I'm a bit more skeptical that happens exactly as everyone hopes. We'll see. It's very possible, right? I would love to see it happen, but I'm a little less certain that one. I don't know how much sort of the White House can unilaterally do versus needing Congress to approve something like that.
Can River custody it so we can see how much the United States?
Possibly.
How solid is this? More not necessarily a River question, but more just a broad among the institution. How secure is institutional security? Is it a big risk to have all of your eggs in one institutional basket. For instance, like with River or FBTC or IBIT or Coinbase, or is it generally pretty solid? Are we going to see Mt. Gox again ever? Like, what are the chances?
Yeah, so it's a good question, right? Like the short answer is what Bitcoin forces everyone to recognize. There's no such thing as zero risk. And with Bitcoin, there's no way to socialize the losses were somebody to mess up. So no institution has zero risk. River doesn't have zero risk. Coinbase doesn't have zero risk. BlackRock doesn't have zero risk. I do think, however, the industry has matured to a point where the people who are custodying large amounts of Bitcoin in the United States generally have their act together. It's not true of every single institution, but it is much better than it used to be. And so I think you're seeing much higher, the options that exist that are sort of the leaders in the market today are relatively high quality options. And so you have choices now, and it's pretty easy to split up your Bitcoin between those options if you wanted to hedge your risk and even potentially self-custody yourself. And so the short answer is yes, it's safe, but nothing is perfectly safe, and so make your decisions based on that.
And a nice website does not mean you're secure.
Yeah, totally.
It's a contentious topic in the Bitcoin circles, but like safety versus Michael Saylor on like Bitcoin lending and collateral and yields. And I know Jack Mahler's was talking, of doing that product. How do you view that, as a strong custodian? How do you view Bitcoin lending and use as collateral?
Yeah, so you're talking about borrowing cash against Bitcoin. Yeah. So borrowing cash against Bitcoin is definitely interesting, right? If you have Bitcoin, it definitely makes sense in various situations. If you can get a good price loan against your Bitcoin, to do it. Maybe you have a big expense in life, and selling Bitcoin would mean a big tax bill, and also missing out on the opportunity cost of that Bitcoin appreciation. Borrowing against your Bitcoin to bridge that expense, assuming you have other income to eventually pay that loan, can make a lot of sense. I think a lot of people maybe also use Bitcoin borrowing against their Bitcoin to lever a bit as well, and maybe even buy more Bitcoin. That one's a little riskier. But I think what we'll see is the market mature there. I think borrowing cash against Bitcoin should be one of the cheapest loans you could possibly make. We're not there yet. They're still pretty expensive. And I think as the price comes down over time, we'll see more and more people doing it. But you have to compare it to your other options, right? If you only have Bitcoin, then it's very compelling. If you have other assets you can borrow against and you can get cheaper loans there, then you might be doing that instead. So it really just depends on your personal situation. I think we'll see higher quality offerings there over the years to come.
If you invest in BlackRock ETFs, you're not buying Bitcoin. You don't own any Bitcoin, right?
Correct. You're buying.
You can't get your Bitcoin. That's all.
You can't get your Bitcoin. You're buying a securitized version of Bitcoin. Yeah.
Why would anybody do it?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it does. If you have an account at a private bank and you're used to being able to do all sorts of things with your securities.
Yeah. People with brain wouldn't do it.
Hey, so question on Bitcoin for payments. What's your outlook on Bitcoin for payments? Because I feel like as the price appreciates, the inclination to actually spend in Bitcoin is going to be.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin. So there's sort of Bitcoin as a store of value and Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. Bitcoin as a store of value has very obvious product market fit, right? Everyone here, believes that. Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is something I think we'll continue to see growth in over the years to come. I think more and more people and businesses will pay in Bitcoin as more and more people have it. I do think, however, we're still quite a ways from Bitcoin ever competing with fiat payment rails in terms of order of magnitude of payments or volumes. I think for me, sort of one of the really kind of big. One of the proofs of this is no matter how bad a fiat currency is, like in Argentina, for example, they've gotten their act together a bit, but over the last 5 years, inflation was through the roof. Nobody held on to the Argentinian pesos but everyone still transacted in pesos at the stores because the stickiness of these fiat protocols, no matter how bad the money is, the fiat protocols are just so sticky. And so I think we're in a transitionary period here where we're entering this dual money era where people will save in Bitcoin, but they'll still largely spend and earn in dollars. But there will be sort of a growing sort of subset of transactions where Bitcoin makes more and more sense.
I understand that River was pretty technology forward in adoption on Lightning Network. Could you comment a little bit on your experience on Lightning Network and what you've seen there?
Yeah, so we were maybe the first company in the US to have Lightning support. We had Lightning when we launched in 2019. And since then, the Lightning Network has seen a lot of growth. We've put out a number of reports on the growth of the Lightning Network. You can see it on our website if you want. And I think the Lightning Network will continue to be a very important part of Bitcoin. But Lightning also isn't a silver bullet. Like Lightning isn't a silver bullet to everyone in the world being able to transact with Bitcoin in a self-sovereign way. I think what Lightning will serve as is like the backbone of all sort of Bitcoin layer 2s. And so I define layer 2s as, like, you could say River's a layer 2, right? Like centralized apps connecting to centralized apps. So Lightning is connecting all the exchanges today, right? You can send from River to Coinbase to Cash App, all with Lightning, all off chain, right? Instantly, very cheaply. But also other scaling solutions like Arc or these other L2 solutions. I think Lightning will be bridges between, or Cashew or eCash mints. What we're seeing is like Lightning is sort of the bridge between all of these scaling solutions. So I think Lightning is like this shared protocol, this glue for all of the centralized and decentralized sort of scaling tools people are going to build in the years to come. So that's kind of how I view it.
Maybe one or two more questions.
So I know you bought Bitcoin in 2013. So what's your motivation to keep building River? And along with that, what do you feel like the number one downstream positive effect of the world on Bitcoin's going to be?
It's a good question. I think the reason that I love building Bitcoin is maybe I'm just neurotic and I don't know what else to do if I'm not working. So that's probably like the easiest answer. I don't know, like I just love building things and I love building things that are useful to people. And I really do believe though also like it's just getting started, right? Bitcoin is going to change the world. I think it's on a trajectory to become the reserve asset of the world. But that's not just going to happen magically. Like people have to build the things to make that happen, and I want to help accelerate that. I think what it will lead to for the world is, I don't think that Bitcoin is going to lead to a world where nobody trusts any institution and everyone just does everything themselves the hard way. I actually think that version of like the Bitcoin vision I don't subscribe to that. What I think Bitcoin does is it actually creates a world with higher trust institutions, because Bitcoin allows everyone to opt out. But by giving people the ability to opt out, fewer people will want to, because the institutions will behave better and you'll be able to trust them even more. And so that's the future I hope Bitcoin brings to the world. I don't think people want to live in a world where you don't trust any institution. People want, like, civilization requires institutional trust. People want to be able to trust their institutions, and I hope that Bitcoin brings a future where you can't.
You talk about putting Bitcoin on your own balance sheet. You talk a little bit about private company adoption, specifically to Central Ohio. Are you seeing many private companies go that route from a momentum standpoint? And do you do any education for public companies, private companies?
Great question. Yeah, we've seen corporate adoption of Bitcoin really tick up very quickly over the last year, and then over the last few months, even the pace has accelerated. And we see all sorts of companies buying Bitcoin, operating companies, trusts, LLCs, like the full spectrum of businesses are buying Bitcoin. Julia and maybe some of our team here could chime in on the stuff we're seeing specifically in Ohio. I know Ben or Lindsay, if any like interesting Ohio trends specifically you're seeing?
I would say nothing like unique, but the same sentiment applies to any Central Ohio business. I mean, any food business, incentive business, all across Ohio. And we see, it's really all from something as small as a single member family farm all the way up to the large size operating businesses. So it's not necessarily unique to Ohio in that sense, but it's really all across all 48 states that we support.
But it's funny because just today, our relationship management team, of which Ben is a relationship manager who works with higher net worth clients and businesses typically looking to buy 100,000 plus to millions in Bitcoin, the team said, they're like, I don't even need to be on the call anymore because businesses are so eager to onboard. Like, they don't want to talk to me. They just want to know how to sign up and what docs they need to send us so that we can title their entity. So we're seeing just so much urgency, whereas even just 6 months ago, they would express interest, but you had to sell them. You had to pitch them on Bitcoin, pitch them on River, and now it's like, no, just let me on. I'm ready to go.
I think the thing that's clicking is seeing inflation with the dollars, and then seeing Bitcoin grow in purchasing power, and just more and more people are doing the math. I think we're still in an era where sort of the companies buying Bitcoin are run by what I call the orange pill dictator. It's typically a company that's run by, it's like one person who personally sort of, it clicked, right? And then they go, well, geez, I run a business, we should do it for my business too. If it makes sense for me, it makes sense for my company. And that's typically the path that a company goes through.
All right, Alex, I guess the last question is, Christmas is in 15 days. What are you asking for from Santa?
Bitcoin 150K. No.
All right, that's it. But thank you all so much for coming and for supporting Bitcoin and supporting River. It's wonderful to meet you all in person. And I think we'll probably hang out till about 8:30 or so. And then I'm sure our team has some recommendations for bars that you can all migrate to. But thank you again for coming.
Thanks, everyone.